Sonic 3D Blast is a game I do not like. In fact, I think it's the worst game from Sonic's classic era. Growing up with Sonic the Hedgehog, you always come across those weird spin-off games, many of which I discovered on Sonic Mega Collection Plus. This compilation is great, by the way. I made a video on it, but don't watch it. It shows just how stellar the classic games are in contrast to his later days, but they're not perfect. When you think classic Sonic, there's no real standout dud or miss. If a game is mediocre or bad, you just kinda brush it off and play the main series. Nothing like how the 3D games are. So when I say 3D Blast is the worst classic entry, it's not a very obvious answer. There are other games that probably get even more hate than the one I listed. Most notably, the Game Gear titles. Sonic Spinball, Sonic Drift, and Sonic Blast are a few good examples. But for as long as I've been with the online community, there's this other game that gets probably the most hate in the classic lineup. And that game is titled Sonic Labyrinth. Yes, the title is already scary enough, giving you Sonic 1 flashbacks. You know the ones I'm talking about. This released a year before 3D Blast, but I have no idea what the reception of the games were to the general public back then, because the games are so weird. 3D Blast has two versions that are strikingly different, which could really jumble its legacy over time, and Labyrinth because I don't even know who bought this thing. This is mainly a comparison between what I think is the worst, and what I believe most people think is the worst. I'm not trying to force you to believe what I believe, so try not to get put off by the title of this. But strangely enough, they have a lot of similarities, which is why I imagine they're hated so much. Both of the objectives require you to find stuff in order to progress. Instead of moving left to right, you move everywhere. So there's an element of 3D going on. You go figure, right? Same camera angle and everything. There's a boss at the end of each zone as you'd expect, and I guess that's it. But the takeaway is Sonic Labyrinth is more of a 3D Blast Game Gear port than Sonic Blast. There is literally no other game in the series as similar to 3D Blast as Sonic Labyrinth, so the comparison makes sense. Like I said, the reception with 3D Blast has always been strange to me, almost like Knuckles Chaotix. I never really know how hated or loved this game is. All I know is it's my bottom tier classic game. Labyrinth, however, is despised by everyone. If the majority of gamers can agree on one classic Sonic game to be the worst of them all, I'm guessing it's Labyrinth. With a claim like that, it shouldn't be difficult to understand why. My best guess is that the game isn't fast. Sonic awkwardly walks his way around the map instead of running. He's supposed to be the fast gaming character. When you do this, it's just confusing. It's a basic issue people have with the mechs. It's a basic issue people have with the Werehog. But with that being said, I think it's the better game. The controls. Yes, Labyrinth is slow and you're prompted to use the spin dash to progress. At first, it may seem like a weird concept, but it's interesting, sorta. In Sonic, we're not really used to spin dashing in multiple directions. You just kinda hold down a button and speed on. Similar thing here, except you're going to be using it 95% more often this time around. It's not really hard to take off since you're given a speed meter. If you know how to read and time the meter, you have an idea of how far you're going to go. Now, it's not perfect by any means. You are given the option to stop Sonic whenever you want after spin dashing, thankfully, but Sonic will slide around like crazy, and if you do not get a grasp of that, you could easily have trouble. You will be annoyed rather fast. It will affect your enjoyment of the game on first play. In a way, it feels natural to me because I feel like if he stopped on a dime, it'd be, I don't know, off? The sense of momentum is what I prefer with the spin dash, and bouncing off obstacles as if it were a pinball game is almost fun to me. It's a very wacky game, and half of the time you don't know where you're gonna end up. What makes Labyrinth's control manageable is the walk feature. What I like is that Sonic isn't running around, making the stage even more slippery. It's simple to position Sonic in a way that prepares you to speed towards something. 3D Blast also has this issue of not having great control of Sonic. Again, they're designed very much the same. Though here, we're moving a bit faster like Sonic would normally, with very poor control. Oh my god, the control in 3D Blast is deadly. Before Heroes, before Shadow, we had 3D Blast, and good god, was it awkward. Sometimes I'm not even sure if it's the control, but rather the annoying camera angle. But it's going to take some getting used to. Unlike Sonic Labyrinth, we have a jump, and even a homing attack item to make things easier. This game just screams innovation, doesn't it? Well, the jump brings me to another point, so I want to sum this one up by saying 3D Blast does have the speed of Sonic that most would want, but with it comes countless slippery moments and running into a lot of things. There's very little of that in Labyrinth since you're most likely going to be spinning in a set path while moving, and the only slippery moments are when I'm bouncing from wall to wall or stopping a spin dash. So how does this go into the gameplay objective? Is it all that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things? Okay, I said that both games require you to collect things before moving to the next act. Sonic Labyrinth has keys, 3D Blast has flickies. One immediately sounds more annoying than the other. Yes, I'm talking about the birds. DJ Khaled would agree. To explain, there are 5 birds scattered around each part of an act. Yes, I said part of an act. You're going to be finding 5 more after the first set, and oh, it doesn't stop there. Some stages keep going. Second zone in the game, 15 freaking flickies. Now, by how obnoxious that sounds, these have to be extremely easy to get, right? No. Well, no, they're not. In fact, one of the most annoying things in the game is collecting these birds. They jump around, fly away from you, and make an already awkward controlling game more insufferable. In Labyrinth, the keys stay put. You can position yourself where you want before spin dashing into them, and they won't move. Even if you get attacked, they stick around for a bit before respawning in their original area. You may think I just suck at Sonic 3D Blast, but I'd much rather collect the keys in Labyrinth than fight my way to capture these annoying birds. And there are so many of them. There are also only 3 keys per act, making it that much more tolerable. I can't express how freaking easy Sonic Labyrinth is. I even think the bosses are more fun. I use fun lightly because both games are pretty uneventful with this. The boss fights in 3D Blast are certainly more creative and dynamic, but just like the rest of the game, they're so annoying. It could just be me, but I never know when I'm actually hitting Robotnik or not. I could jump into him, but it doesn't even feel like I really hit him. Sometimes I will, other times I'll attack only to get hurt for some reason. Of course, this is due to me hitting the wrong spot, but visually it doesn't look like I am. I'm sure this has to do with the whole 3D gimmick, and no one was used to this gameplay for Sonic at the time, but it becomes a weird, slow process when I'm fighting in this game. I never feel like I'm attacking correctly. The control is already off for me, and most importantly, though dynamic in appearance, the bosses are just so boring. Everything feels slow, nothing feels satisfying, and they ultimately make up some of my least favorite bosses in the classic era. Admittedly, I do love the scope and feel of the final boss, but everything else, no. The game I'm comparing it to isn't loads of fun either, but the bosses are quick, simple, and I at least know when I'm hitting something. Because of all that, I have more fun playing Labyrinth's bosses. There's more of a thrill for me. Due to both games being on different systems with definite hardware differences, I don't think it's even fair for me to compare the soundtracks. 3D Blast for Genesis and Saturn are some of my favorite in the series, believe it or not. Labyrinth, while not bad, is nowhere near memorable. I feel like the only reason I remember the music is because I've played Labyrinth more than anyone should. I find 3D Blast to be a really interesting idea, and I have no idea how huge it was for its time. In my opinion, it's the worst classic Sonic game ever made. Everything from the poor control, camera angle that distorts your control, and pretty much everything, incredibly boring boss fights, and the entire point of the game being very aggravating. I don't even know if 3D Blast is a difficult game, but for me it's almost unbearable. I can't recall a time I've ever had fun with the game. I had more enjoyment out of Sonic Blast for the Game Gear. At least that one is easier to control and its structure isn't stupid. And another thing I've always hated about 3D Blast, even as a kid, was its visuals. I understand hardware limitations for something this ambitious, but damn, who approved these color patterns? It pains my eyes just looking at 3D Blast because it almost makes me nauseous. The Saturn version is much better with this, has a great special stage, and is the version to play if you just have to, but 3D Blast is an overall mess of a game and shouldn't have been made. When people say Sonic Labyrinth is the worst game, or even a top 3 worst Sonic game, I can't help but question it. Everyone reacts differently to games, I get that, but it's such a simple game. And I've always thought this, to the point that it's hard to even explain why. None of the labyrinths are difficult to get through, with the exception of 3-2, which can screw you up a bit, but the game is so freaking short and easy. That's honestly my biggest issue with it. That, and I don't know who this game really appeals to. Gotta wonder what Sega were thinking when making both of these games, because I don't know anyone who asked for them. I can say I enjoy Labyrinth to an extent. I hate 3D Blast, but I don't think either of them are necessary for anything. Seriously, like, they're unique, yeah, though I fail to see why anyone would want these games. Spin-offs, I guess. Maybe you don't agree with me, maybe you love 3D Blast, and that's cool. Maybe you think I'm just wrong in every aspect, but this is how I always viewed the two games. Let me know which game you think is better. A lesser of two evils, rather.